Good morning. Today our staff meeting is going to be about how our school will approach the creation and the maintenance and the improvement of a guaranteed and viable curriculum. So I have created a little infographic kind of for your some visual appeal here that I'm just calling an educator's guide to curriculum, how to achieve one that is guaranteed and viable. So the first thing that I just want to talk about is, what does that mean? What does guaranteed and viable mean? Well, first of all, last week in our staff meeting, we learned about our approach to professional learning communities, and that setup is, it heavily relies on 4 critical questions. And the critical questions start with the very first one being, what do we expect our students to know and be able to do? And that is, of course, curriculum. And so it's the basis of any professional learning community, but it's also the foundation of student learning. How can we expect our students to achieve at high levels if we do not have a curriculum set in place that allows them to do that? A guaranteed and viable curriculum, lastly, is framed with meaningful learning targets and is guided by rubrics, because curriculum and assessment, I'll talk about today, they really go so hand in hand to make sure that what we want our students to achieve, we're able to measure, and also figure out if we're not getting them where we want them to go, how can we switch things along the way. And that's all assessment. So really, a guaranteed and viable curriculum holds student growth at its core and works to provide a platform for that growth. So the next question that I want to address and have some discussion about is, what components are a part of our school's curriculum? And I want to be very clear, first off, saying that curriculum is not dependent on a textbook. Curriculum is not dependent on a teacher. And so when textbooks come and go and when educators come and go, the curriculum should not drastically shift because of that. The teachers and the textbooks are among many resources that should be used to bring the curriculum to life, so to speak, but it's not dependent on that. So many times people think that, let's purchase a textbook and then that automatically becomes our curriculum, and that's not what we're going for. We are first and foremost going for a curriculum that reflects authentic learning. We will talk later about enduring understandings and what we want our students to really know and be able to do that goes far beyond content. And so we want that learning to be authentic, and we want our curriculum to be a vehicle that gets our students there. Our curriculum also is going to include unit learning targets with rubric descriptors. This is basically expectations of student performance. How will we know when students have met a level of proficiency or have exceeded proficiency? And the answer to that question is, we will have detailed rubrics that let us know where students are, and more importantly, let the students know where they are, kind of on this continuum of a learning target. We will also, in our curriculum, have I can student-friendly statements that are observable and measurable. So we will be able to take standards, turn them into learning targets, and then from those learning targets, or maybe the same as those learning targets, will be these I can statements that are written in a language that students can access and understand, because it has to make sense to them, or the goals that they set for themselves won't make sense. The next question is, how will we create it? And we are in a little bit of a review process at this point in time. And so here's what we're going to do. First of all, we are going to analyze where are we at currently? What's our current state? And then what are our desired outcomes? So we're going to take a look at our current learning targets. We're going to take a look at how students have been achieving with what we have in place. And then, of course, the gaps that have been created. We're going to take a look at standards that are taught versus standards that are assessed, because I think a lot of us don't have the time always to double check that and see, oh yeah, I teach that, but do I assess it? And then lastly, we'll take a look at resources. The second thing we'll do in the creation of our curriculum is establish some consistency, and then create a desired state, or create that goal of where we want to be. So we will start by creating a mission and a vision. We know that in all of our work, we talked about this last week with PLCs, but to help us as educators know where we want to go is only going to help our students know where we want them to go. We will also have vertical teams that will meet and determine power standards. we know that, especially for content areas that are trying to incorporate literacy standards, that to assess on all of them might be challenging in one school year. And so we are going to share that responsibility. And so vertical teams will determine what are those standards that we think are extremely enduring and that we need for each grade level, so that students can have the skills and dispositions that they need to move on to the next grade and ultimately be successful for post-high school. We're going to create those I can statements together as a team and learning targets for all of our common assessments. So we're going to, because we're establishing some consistency between schools within our district, we're going to work towards creating some common assessments and making sure that we're checking in and assessing on the same standards, using the same rubrics, and creating those I can statements. And then the last thing we'll do as a measure kind of where we're at is assess our resources. Do we have what we need to do the job we want to do? I spoke before about how our textbooks are just resources, and there are many of you who might not have even cracked open your textbook with your students in the past however many years. And so we know that there are so many resources to help all of our learners at different levels, be it technology or otherwise. And so we just need to assess where are we at and what might we need to move forward. The final question kind of takes two ideas and melds them into one because they go really hand in hand. And that is, how will we implement and monitor our curriculum? First of all, we're going to establish a curriculum review cycle for every content area. And in years past, we know that we have created curriculums and then we've carried them out, but maybe have not taken the appropriate time to reflect and make changes. And people have shared with us that it feels like something new all the time. It's a brand new curriculum and we haven't had a chance to fix our last curriculum. And so we are going to put kind of on the calendar a curriculum review cycle, and that will allow us to carry out a curriculum, but then take the necessary and appropriate time to see what's working and what's not working. And that's part of the monitoring that's going to happen even in this first year of implementation. So our goal is that PLCs will work to implement our action plans with fidelity. They will use those learning targets that we've created. They will take a look at their common assessments and see where students are achieving and where students aren't and what needs to happen to get them to where they need to be. As vertical teams, we'll meet monthly to review overall the questions that will drive our work is going to be what's working well and what needs adjustment. And then finally, we know that when we implement a new curriculum, there will be issues. And so our goal is going to always be to determine the root causes and then implement adjustments and assess if those adjustments are getting us to where we want to be. Again, that cyclical idea that we try something, we figure out if it's working. If it's not working, we try to fix it. We see if what we fixed is working. That whole concept is going to really guide our curricular work. So that is the conclusion of our initial meeting here. Again, our overall goal is to create a curriculum that is both guaranteed and viable for our students to achieve the highest levels of success.